Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Living Schoolyards Act lecture series, the fifth and final session, Schoolyard Design, Green Infrastructure, and Green Building Standards. I'm Nancy Striniste, Green Schoolyard America's National Policy Liaison. And also for this session, I wanted to say that I'm a landscape designer and a former teacher. I'm joined by my Green Schoolyards America colleagues, Rachel Pringle, who will be managing the chat and the Q&A, and Dante Sudalovsky, who is running our tech today. The Living Schoolyards Act is a groundbreaking bill that will direct important federal resources towards transforming school grounds into living schoolyards, richly layered outdoor environments that strengthen local ecological systems while providing place-based, hands-on learning resources for students of all ages. It is incredibly exciting to see Senate Bill 1538 in the federal record. This legislation offers a huge opportunity to equitably improve the educational experiences and health of children all across the country, as well as realize climate, ecological, community, and economic benefits. Some background on the bill: it was introduced into the US Senate by Martin Heinrich, a Democrat from New Mexico, in September of 22. He reintroduced the bill just a few weeks ago on May 10th. We're encouraging you to reach out today to your senators and congresspeople and encourage them to co-sponsor the bill. We've got a link that we can post in the chat about how to find the contact information for your elected officials. When you call, Senator Heinrich's office has asked us to have you ask your senator's staff to contact Elizabeth Hill in Senator Heinrich's office. Today is the last in our 5-part series on the benefits of living schoolyards. Through this series, we have expanded our grassroots community of active support for the bill. As we've discussed in past lectures, learning outdoors on living schoolyards is a powerfully engaging way to improve children's academic experiences, to benefit their physical and mental health. It provides ecological benefits and mitigates the effects of climate change. And as we learned in our last session, creating accessible green spaces helps address food equity, provide green spaces for communities and training, and provides green jobs, helping to maintain and care for green schoolyards. Our coalition of endorsers is now at more than 200 organizations, which Senator Heinrich cited when he introduced the bill. There's a huge amount of knowledge, expertise, and on-the-ground experience within this coalition. This lecture series has been bringing us together and drawing on that expertise. And of course, the main goal is to highlight the many benefits of living schoolyards and to create a library of recorded testimony which can be used by elected officials and their staffs to understand the benefits of this legislation, and can be used anytime anyone needs to advocate and educate about the benefits of living schoolyards. Next. Oh, I meant to say that by our count, the live sessions and the recordings have reached at least 1,500 people. So we're excited about that. So we're really encouraging you to do what you can to support the Living Schoolyards Act. You can go to our webpage and join the coalition of endorsers. We want to encourage you to reach out by email or phone or letters to your House and Senate offices, especially today, because we hear that when they get lots of calls in the same day, they really take notice. There is contact information and letter writing templates on our webpage. You can also share our student toolkit with kids that you know and encourage them to write. Student letters from kids have a huge impact. You can follow us on social media and share our posts. We encourage you to write an op-ed in your local paper on what Living Schoolyards and the Living Schoolyard Act would mean to you. You can visit the offices of your senators and representatives in Congress, either in their home districts or if you're in the DC area here in DC. Tell them about the bill and how much it would mean to you and to kids, and just tell everyone you know about this bill and ask them to support it. And I'd like to hear in the chat from those of you in the audience today about what you have done and what you will do to support the Living Schoolyards Act. We would love to know. This is Living Schoolyards Month, and we are encouraging people to plan schoolyard tours and invite elected officials and local press as a way to make the case for the value of and the need for living schoolyards and focus attention on this pending legislation. We have a page on our website for tour planning tips and a downloadable PDF flyer that you can print and give out at your tours. I think the link for that is going to be in the chat. Actually, today, Senator Heinrich's staff is visiting schoolyards in DC on a tour that we helped to coordinate, and our DC partners are planning a tour of living schoolyards with a big group of House and Senate staffers coming up. The first 4 sessions in this 5-part series focused on the educational, health, climate, and ecological, community, and economic benefits of living schoolyards, and all those recordings are available on our website. Today, we're going to focus on how to realize those benefits through planning and design. Our speakers today come from local and national organizations whose work in planning, design, and green building provide the roadmap for implementation. Together, they bring decades of experience in the field and a wealth of knowledge. Time in these lectures is always short, and we apologize for limiting their presentation so much. I know they have so much more good information to share than there will be time for today. But please read their bios in the chat and follow the incredible work that each of them and their organizations are doing. As you listen to our speakers, feel free to post questions in the chat. The Green Schoolyards America team will respond when we can, and there will be time for the panelists to respond after they all speak. We also will be posting research links and resources in the chat, and afterwards those will go up on our website along with the lecture recordings. Our speakers today are Brenda Kessler from the Children in Nature Network, who is going to tell us about the Green Schoolyard District Design Guidelines. Danielle Pieranunzi, the Sustainable Sites Initiative Director from the Green Business Certification, Inc., who is going to tell us about green infrastructure guidelines, especially as they relate to schoolyards. And Greg Miller is a landscape architect who is here representing the American Society of Landscape Architects, and who is also a practicing landscape architect in New Mexico, the home state of Senator Heinrich. So Greg will be the perfect voice to close out the series. Huge gratitude to our speakers for being here today, and I'll turn it over to Brenda. Welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. Those are some great numbers you just shared on the endorsements and the views of these videos. That's really incredible work. It's a pleasure to be here sharing today. Like Nancy said, I'm Brenda Kessler. I'm with the Children in Nature Network. And for those that are not familiar with our organization, we're a completely virtual organization that supports children's connection to nature through various strategies, including providing technical assistance to cities that are looking to start a green schoolyard, district-wide or city-wide green schoolyard program. And we do this in partnership with our National League of Cities. Next slide, please. I'll do just a very quick overview. There are many cities that we've worked with from across the country and are currently working to advance their work, and maybe we have some of you on the call today. In our definition of green schoolyards, aside from being absolutely nature rich, we do focus on them being district-wide, equity-based, and open access. That is a picture of one of our meetings with our current cohort from last year in Atlanta. So next slide, please. I'm going to jump right into today's topic. I know that this is a lecture series, the last one, and there has been incredible topics covered before. And the goal for today is to really dive into the design stage of green schoolyards and the endless possibilities that go into the creative process of what makes up a green schoolyard. And that's part of the fun in this work, right? They all look very different, and there are so many features that can go in, whether you're working in a small area or a large area. The features can really vary widely. I think this collage kind of reflects that. And next slide, please. What I really want to share today, we don't have a lot of time, are some bits and pieces of a product that was an extensive collaboration of a group of professionals that have been in this field much longer than I have and are incredibly talented. And that's the district design guidelines. It's a two-part document that really delves into what are some of the key considerations for school districts if you're starting a program and you're drafting your own guidelines. You might ask yourself, like, well, why do I need district design guidelines? And really the bottom line is that having this in writing, having definitions, having your vision and the outcomes that you're looking for out of this program is really going to ensure the long-term success of your program. These guidelines will support the continuity when you have staff turnover, the efficiency, the consistency of your program. So this is I think Dante is going to help me drop the document I don't want to direct your attention to the document that's being dropped in there. We can look at that later. I'm just going to highlight some key areas that you might find in this document. It's very detailed, and this won't be nearly enough time to go over in depth with it. But if we can go to the next slide, please. It outlines, so it's a two-part document. It outlines the district-wide process and also the individual design. So once you have a site selection, areas, how you might consider about going on the individual design. So when you're looking at the district-wide roadmap, we know that creating a green schoolyard program is not linear because some of these areas will happen in parallel. Things will fluctuate and change, but the idea is that your district design guidelines will touch upon some of these core areas so that when you do have turnover, anyone that is coming on board can get a grasp of what the overall vision is. So forming a team, who is the core team? What is the vision? What are the goals that align with your district priorities? Identifying policies that already align there, creating those cross-sector partnerships, equitably selecting a site within your school district, and bringing in the community, co-designing with the community, opening it up to the community. And then obviously at the end, we don't want to forget about evaluating impact. So that's just a roadmap that is suggested in the document. Next slide, please. We know that starting a green schoolyard program, for it to have a successful implementation, we really need to think about all the stakeholders at the district level, right? So who are the users? Who are the teachers, the curriculum, the facilities, individuals, all of these individuals that bring in different skill sets that can help develop that vision and build those lasting relationships. These are things that you want to include. And these are the people that will be caring for the new features. So including in your core team, core district stakeholders will be important. Next slide, please. And so sometimes, we create these great spaces, but we don't have the policies in place or the guidelines or the procedures to get the students outside. So the absence of clear policies and guidelines can really thwart some efforts. So looking into policies, these are just some examples, and in the larger document, you will find federal, state, and school district policies that have supported this type of work. Yeah, next slide, please. And then cross-sector partnerships, thinking about who is at the table from different organizations. We've seen great work in our collaborative work with Grand Rapids on how just city school partnerships come to life to make these schoolyards a true success. So just some examples of who you might bring into this space and want to document in your district design guidelines. And now I think we're going into the individual. Next slide, please. So like I said, this document is a two-part document, and it outlines the individual design process. And we know that there are many guidelines out there. This is not the only one, and there are other organizations. And this is, like I said, this is just a starting point and offering some guidance on how you might go about in the individual design. And when we were drafting this document, we know that the areas are, and the whole schoolyard might be an outdoor classroom. So we were thinking of how do we organize this document so that when you're thinking about the features, you are able to think about all of the key considerations. So we ended up with drafting out some core areas that we have seen play out in green schoolyards. And then there are endless possibilities of features that can go in to fill those areas. So I'm just gonna go over these broader areas. Next slide, please, which this is just another collage of the multiple features that can populate different areas. Next slide, please. Oh, I wanted to highlight that we did include the 7 design principles from David Sobel, which some of you might be familiar with. He's an American educator who has studied very extensively place-based education and has these 7 principles of areas of how children interact with the outdoor spaces and areas that you might consider when you are designing an outdoor space. So just wanted to highlight that was part of the document. Next slide, please. And so we have outdoor classrooms, which you might include boulders and logs and include chalkboards or whiteboards. And these are areas that should really support teachers coming outside and taking their lessons outdoors. Again, I'm not going to go into the details. These are just the areas how we organize this document. And then gardens and plantings, right? These can take so many shapes and be woven into a schoolyard. They can be in the shape of raised garden beds. They can be edible, they can be fruit, but these are just areas that you might consider, and then the features will vary. Next slide, please. Play areas. So we know that schools do need traditional play equipment. So we're not shying away from that, but nature play areas woven into your traditional play equipment, and then pathways and trails, and how do those come about? And it all ties into some of Sobel's principles on adventure and where does the trail lead to, right? And what materials can they explore within that trail? And next slide, please. Open fields. We know that schools, they have they serve many functions other than playing and recess, but open fields are part of green schoolyards. And so how do you integrate other elements into these areas? And native landscapes making sure that we're using those plants that are low maintenance and integrating indigenous plants and local that are local to the local ecosystem, so that we are honoring that. Next slide, please. And then, so like I said, what I just mentioned were the core areas, how we outlined this, and then building out those areas. Many features can go in, and some key considerations that you want to keep in mind is maintenance and sustainability, because you will, whatever you're putting in, you are being, it needs to be taken care of. And then individual design, inclusive design, sorry, that is ADA compliant, co-designing with the community, including children's voices, making sure that it's culturally relevant. If you're adding murals and art features, and intergenerational play are areas that you might want to consider. And then the last thing, I think I'm on to the last slide, is a key step, right? Measuring the impact of these spaces. And it's just as important as creating these spaces. Once we are measuring this impact and understanding what are the benefits and what are the outcomes of these spaces, will be just as important to open up those funding streams and continue this work for others that are looking into this work. So again, this is just a very broad overview of the district design guidelines, and I welcome all of you to look at it deeper in your own time. And I also wanted to share a gallery that we recently launched. Dante, I don't know if you put it in the chat yet. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but we just launched a Green Schoolyards design features gallery that outlines, what these spaces might look like. Provide some inspiration and ideas.
And next, we're going to hear from Danielle Pieranunzi from the Green Business Certification, Inc. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Nancy and Dante and Rachel, for having me here. I'm looking forward to sharing our work on sites and hearing from the audience. I'm going to go over what the site's rating system is, and then illustrate that with some sites projects that as case studies, and then provide some resources. So for those that aren't familiar with sites, it's called the Sustainable Sites Initiative, or sites for short. And it's a program at GBCI. It's a third-party certification body that owns and administers sites, but it's also, you might be more familiar with the LEED Green Building Rating System. It's the same umbrella. And sites was developed based on the understanding that land is a crucial component of the built environment, in addition to buildings and other spaces. And the tools apply to a wide variety of project sizes, programming, contexts, from university campuses, elementary schools, corporate and government facilities, and city parks. As you can see here, these are some of the certified projects. And built landscapes and outdoor spaces are unique because they can have that capacity to appreciate and value rather than depreciate, because they're generating essential ecosystem services that protect our communities from hazards, improve our daily lives, address climate change, and lots of biodiversity. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that is the founding concept of sites, and why it was developed. It was really trying to advance design standards and elevate this value in a tool that is also incentivizing certification. And so landscapes and these outdoor spaces aren't seen as an afterthought, but they're really viewed as part of at the forefront of decision making. These are the primary resources, the culmination of 8 years of research and pilot testing. The document on the left is a free downloadable document that I think the link is being put in the chat. I can't see it at the same time. And that document is the rating system. It's an abbreviated version of the rating system for kind of more easier consumption. On the right is the reference guide that's also available for purchase, but that has got more resources and examples. And but you can get definitely a glimpse of what the rating system looks like from the document on the left. So watching my time here. This is the way the rating system is organized, and it follows the typical design and development process. So you're starting with your site selection, doing a proper site assessment, engaging the stakeholders and users, similar to what Brenda just brought up, and then looking at site design in various aspects in terms of soil, vegetation, water, materials, as well as the people in the community that are being impacted by the project. And then looking at construction practices. And this is really key because things can fall apart between design and construction. So we're really trying to close that gap and looking at how a project will be maintained, which is another really important aspect of these to ensure long-term sustainability. And of course, looking at how we can incentivize education and performance monitoring to increase that knowledge base of sustainability. Now, I want to give you some just kind of a glimpse into some of the credits because there are 18 prerequisites. Those are the ones that start with P here that you'll see, and then there's 48 credits. So there's a lot. And I'll just give you a glimpse of what might be more relevant to a schoolyard, a living schoolyard. And this is really aligned with the previous speaker, Brenda, about how important it is to really understand the site and have the right people on the team, the right expertise early on from the outset and throughout the design, setting clear performance goals prior to design, doing a site assessment before you design, all of that. And then some of the key people on the team should also be somebody who will maintain the site because they're going to have a different lens, a different perspective of the design. And so that's important to include them early. This project on the right, I want to point out is really, it's a playground in Memphis, Tennessee at Shelby Farms. And in terms of their stakeholder engagement, they went straight to the experts. They included children in their public workshop that they meant to distill the essence of outdoor play. And they asked the children, like, what makes a playground great? And so they distilled that to certain criteria, which was adventure, discovery, health, nature, fun, surprises. And that was all central to the design of the Discovery Playground. And you can see here's a key element of the playground is this winding, meandering path, which is actually an arbor. It's not fully grown in. This is right after the design. So you can see on the bottom left, you see a child running through and it's been grown in with vines. So pretty great. So this is the site design, soil and vegetation section with some example credits. And of course, paying attention to the site soil and vegetation is key to having a healthy, high-performing landscape. This starts with first, like what's protecting what's healthy on the site, what's critical, and then restoring areas with native plants and improving the overall biomass. Really thinking also about the vertical nature of plantings, not just horizontal. And we provide a lot of tools to help guide projects to enhance that. And then also guidance on how to strategically plant vegetation to cool outdoor spaces, as well as reduce energy loads of any nearby buildings. And then of course, water. Water is a precious limited resource and we want to value every drop. So a basic starting point is to choose the right plant for the right place. And that will eliminate a lot of the water that you need. And it's also the energy that goes into pumping and delivering and treating that water. And of course, implementing green infrastructure is a great way to manage, to value water, and then also to help control flooding and improve water quality, reduce the burden on municipal systems. It also helps with reducing urban heat islands because you have less of that hardscape. And of course, we get all these other co-benefits by having green infrastructure, enhancing wildlife habitat, and so on. So by that one practice alone, you can get so many different benefits, and they have all different looks and shapes depending on what kind of site that you're starting with. Here's some examples from a desert landscape in El Paso on the far right to DC with a small plaza at a university. And then the one on the left is a large airport redevelopment in China. And then of course, reconnecting humans with nature is also one of the most important goals of sites, that we want to take advantage of the health and wellness benefits that come from that connection, from improved cognitive functioning to reduction in anxiety and stress. So the idea here is really designing a healthy human habitat. So at the basic level, we want to make the spaces safe and accessible. We create meaningful spaces that promote different beneficial outcomes. We have separate credits that target how to create spaces for mental restoration, how to do it for social interaction, physical activity, all within natural surroundings, and for different users too. For a student, or also teachers need this mental break as well. So they have to be considered as well for all this. And then of course, rewarding projects that share their sustainabilities with a wider audience, with the children, with the community, as well as with the wider audience beyond that, through case studies, through presentations at conferences. So, but in terms of on-site education, not just signage, but programming, tours, art, even potentially partnering with the university to monitor the site, to see how the design's working and gather that data, which is really important. That's that transfer of knowledge can really help drive stewardship in present and future generations. And much of all this is very aligned with the goals of the Living Schoolyards Act. Sites is ultimately an educational tool, and it's intended to create more fulfilling and functional places for everyone. It is a certification system, and the great part about that is it becomes a voice at the table in these development, in the development process, to really ensure accountability and transparency, and to help the project meet its goals. Now I want to show a couple of case studies just to illustrate this a little bit further. This is a Brent Elementary School. It's in DC. And like most public schools, many public schools, not most, this schoolyard started out with primarily using asphalt. You can see in the before image, which is cheap and to install and maintain, but has little environmental quality or no environmental quality and no connection to nature for the students. So the parents and teachers really wanted to create a natural playground and engage students in serious environmental education and foster those benefits that we get from that connection. They worked with the DC Public School Office of Facilities Planning to come up with a low maintenance and cost-effective campus redesign. And I know financing these projects is a really big deal. I just wanted to touch on a little bit of how they did this. They did raise some of their own money through the community, and then they sought out grants through, here it was the DC District of the Environment, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the Capitol Hill Green Schools Initiative. The U.S. Botanic Garden donated about $25,000 in plants and materials. So there's ways to maybe get donation through other local botanic gardens and other efforts to help support these projects. And then the parents and the faculty also joined together to form what they call the Green Team to take responsibility of some of the maintaining of the grounds throughout the year, which was a lot more reduced, being that it was a native landscape, and dealing with a lot of the stormwater issues that they had before. Oops, sorry about that. So these are some of the features. This is what it looks like today, or after the design. But you can see they have a butterfly garden at the entrance. They have rain gardens that replaced a lot of the asphalt. They've removed about 1,500 square feet of asphalt. They have native plantings. They also have a 7,000 square foot outdoor classroom, nature classroom, and the creation of an urban canyon, where they utilized this kind of alley next to the building that we kind of be forgotten sort of space. You can see it here on the bottom right, and they use that for demonstrating green roofs and green walls and learning more about those kind of sustainability features. And about landscape performance, we mentioned just how important monitoring that, and that's very tough to do sometimes, but this project was able to do that with a landscape architecture foundation and was able to quantify how they reduced urban heat island effect here by monitoring the temperature of the surfaces before and after. They were able to reduce stormwater runoff and improve water quality, and actually prove that. Able to reduce carbon emissions from the reduction of not having to mow now a lawn. And then also some social performance data in terms of increased outdoor experiences, how many hours they spent outdoors, how many classes used the nature classroom. It also helped increase the demand of enrollment by 191%. And then also helped increase student attendance, reading test scores, parent engagement, and overall satisfaction with the school. So it's great to have this data, and this is available. I think there's a link being shared because it helps other projects in the future. Quickly, just I know this is about green infrastructure. It's not necessarily about a schoolyard, but I did want to point out another project in DC that was a former parking lot and brownfield site for buses that really focused on green infrastructure. There's a lot of different sustainability elements, but it's really a linear rain garden system that functions as one integrated stormwater system. And the linear rain garden and the bioretention tree pits along the perimeter of the site collect, filter, and direct stormwater into underground cisterns And then this water is reused for the 2 interactive water features, the ice skating rink and for landscape irrigation. So they are able to satisfy up to 95% of the park water's needs. And this equates to about 1.5 million gallons of potable water saved annually. So it's a very highly engineered system in some ways, not for every project, but it's a great model for what you can do. They're also tapped into the buildings next door that are able to handle the water runoff from those buildings as well. And these are some pictures of the site today. And lastly, just a quick glance into the Lucy and Ian Family Garden at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. I just want to point this one out as one of the founding organizations for sites. And there's a lot of different features here, very interactive. The Garden of Yes is a great kind of way to describe this project, really engaging people, engaging kids outdoors in this nature-based play, to come out with their families, to touch, feel, smell, play actively, take risks, learn and gain confidence. And which is a really great project as well. So here are some resources. We have the site's website with many more case studies and the rating system. I also wanted to point out some aligned organizations like ASLA, like the Landscape Architecture Foundation. I want to specifically point out the Landscape for Life website, which offers course materials for teachers to really help with getting started in all this and transferring that knowledge to the students as well. Thank you so much. And here's my contact information if anybody has any more questions.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That was fantastic. And I do want to emphasize that I think those sites design, the sites tool is really helpful in realizing the benefits, that the potential benefits that we've been talking about through this whole series. So thank you so much. Okay, our closing speaker today is Greg Miller, who is a landscape architect practicing in the field, and he's going to talk about some of his experiences and hopefully close us up. So thank you so much. Welcome, Greg.
Great, thank you, Nancy. It's great to be here. It's really cool. I'm looking at the list of attendees, and I see a lot of friendly names on there. So welcome to all my peeps that are on the call, and glad to see your names on there. Real quick, again, I was ASLA National President in 2018, so I had the really great opportunity to travel around the country and see all the great work that landscape architects are doing. As well as Nancy mentioned earlier, I'm a practicing landscape architect here in Albuquerque. And fun fact is my kids actually went to elementary school with Senator Heinrich. So we've known the Heinrichs for a long time, and was really ecstatic to see that he was sponsoring this bill. This is my kids and my nieces. It's why I always grounds me in what I'm doing and why I'm doing this. So being the last, being the last presenter in this series has given me the opportunity to hear all the great things that all of the other presenters have talked about. And really what struck me was hearing all the different benefits. And this is really just a sampling of those benefits. And it doesn't even include Brenda and Danielle's talking points from today. So as you can see, and if you go back and listen, or if you've been listening to this series, is that it's really pretty amazing to hear what everybody has been talking about. But I also have heard, and there's been in the Q&A sessions, that there is questions that come up. And largely what we're finding is that there's always sort of the big three that seem to come back that are challenges to achieving some of those benefits. And so these are pretty common challenges, and they're real challenges. I know that we've faced them in some of the projects that we've been working with school districts on. And it's really critical that the design process be open and address these things, so that these projects aren't something that the districts are really not comfortable with. So to get a little bit more into the big three, the first is safety. So as landscape architects, really one of our primary charges in our profession is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And so schoolyards are one of those areas that gets a lot of high demand use, a lot of unpredictable use. And so safety seems to be always sort of the first and foremost. And schools are used to dealing with play equipment. I know that Danielle and Brenda talked about that before, that play equipment is part of the environment that's out there. And schools are used to dealing with that, and particularly thinking about the use zones of the play equipment itself. And what we like to talk about is designing outside the use zone. Is that, yes, the equipment has a definite benefit, but ASTM and CPSC, which are the design guidelines for play equipment, are pretty specific about exempting the features outside the use zone. So we use that as our way to really open things up and say we are designing outside the use zone, which then gives a little bit more flexibility and freedom to do some of the things that are truly not play equipment. And also, as has been mentioned today, but really building a team of teachers, administrators, and parents, but not just building on a team, but then teaching the teachers. And in the lower left is a diagram where this project was just about to open before the school year. And we walked through some of the different uses and how teachers could inform and educate the kids about where to play with what, and not so much how to play, but that just it raised the awareness. And so it turned something that previously was not something they were comfortable with into something that they became much more comfortable with. Other thing is that we always, in the design process, want to draw attention to the things that are going to cause concern. And so in particular, this was a project we worked on with an elementary school, and they were worried when we had that term bird bath and water and overflow from depression to it, that they were worried about ponds that kids were going to fall and drown in. And so we walked them through the process of how essentially there wasn't going to be any ponding. The water was going to infiltrate below surface. It was part of a green infrastructure, but it wasn't going to be standing water that somebody could drown in. And then we also talked to them about indicators for perceived risks. And so one of the things that comes up is pollinator gardens, and we're big proponents of having pollinator gardens, but we always hear the phrase, yeah, but somebody's going to be allergic to bees, so we can't have pollinator gardens. And so one of the things that we've learned about that is that if you have signs or something that is an indicator of what could potentially be a risk, then teachers and students are able to work around that. They actually embrace having some of that in it just because they're more aware of their surroundings. This was also a project where the school was worried about kids getting into our little planted low shallow depression areas. So we proposed these really low fences, and I'll show a picture of those. But we proposed these little tiny low fences that were just really something that was a trigger to something that was different. And this really goes to what Brenda was talking about earlier, but showing those precedents, building guidelines, building a body of knowledge that helps you to present some possible solutions. And that's one of the things that I think this effort with this whole lecture series and the Living Schoolyards Act is something that's going to really amplify the ability to have successful, tried and true lessons learned that we can all share as a community and be able to convince somebody who maybe is skeptical that these things aren't new. We know that schools are risk averse, but by showing folks that some of these things have been tried and true in other places, even if they're new to you, is a way that makes them more comfortable. Okay, so then, and we've been talking about it today as well, but one of the other challenges is maintenance. And so one of the things that we've talked to a lot of folks about is embracing the unmaintained and actually giving maintenance personnel a permission slip to not have to maintain something. Let it be fuzzy, let it be messy, let it be something that is not a traditional maintenance. And you can see in these images where, yeah, mud is good. There's a little water table in the upper right and it overflows and it gets muddy, and that's fine. It's okay to be fuzzy. It's okay to have an insect habitat, like in the low picture, that is something that is just kind of has that different aesthetic to it. And then I know it's been mentioned in past presentations, but encourage the students to participate in the maintenance, have that be part of the interactive, part of the day is to work on cleaning up after yourself and make it a game. It kind of sounds a little Mary Poppins-ish, but if you encourage that as part of the process, then it reinforces the notion of being part of that landscape. And then planning for succession. So a lot of these projects will usually have initial supporters and champions. And so what happens when those people move on, and basically creating an evolving and an adjusting landscape that is able to just keep being something that still may be fuzzy and still may be messy, but is going to be something that continues to evolve. And then a lot of this is going to be the same thing as other folks have talked about, but with budget, it's building that team of champions and going beyond just the folks in the school is working with the school, say administrators and teachers, but working with the occupational therapists. A lot of schools have physical therapists, speech pathologists, PE teachers. When you get those people on board, then you start to really get a critical mass that starts to really be pushing that these things aren't something that is fluff on the top. There's something that's critical. And this again goes to Brenda's talk about incorporating simple, replicable solutions that can grow over time. And we've learned the value of starting small with a pioneer project that can be a proof of concept. And then all of these things work together to raise the collective awareness. And that's another big thing with the Living Schoolyard Act is the more that we can get in, the more awareness that we're able to raise that thing. And so real quick on the design process, is that moving from the concept designs through schematic designs through construction is an important way that everybody can feel involved and aware of the proposed solutions. But more importantly, people who have suggestions can see that their suggestions and comments are being incorporated throughout the process. This was a school that was constructed, it was bid and constructed by a contractor. So we had to have really clear construction documents, but everybody involved could see how it was evolving. And this is just a really quick before and after of that school that once it was built, everybody had seen it in plan and in sketch as it was coming together, and we're really excited about it when it got built. Here's just another quick example. This is Zuni Elementary School in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was funded by a grant from the Trust for Public Land. I know we had a presenter from TPL earlier in this series, and this is one of the success stories of TPL. So we had a small grant. We were able to start small, work with sketches, work with really quick drawings. So the fees were basically minimum, but coming up with quick and sketchy that developed layers, and we continued to develop the detail that everybody was a part of. And then this project was constructed by volunteers. All the solutions involved were things that they used recycled materials that people brought in, or they used really, really inexpensive materials, a lot of which were donated. And so on a very shoestring budget, it turned what was on the left into what's on the right. That shows you the actual solution to our little fencing, which became, you can see it's not really much of a fence, but was just an indicator that there was a low area, but that it wasn't something that was a barrier. And then really simple things like developing that little planter space out of those modular things, that modular blocks, that were able to be just kind of integrated, that people, it wasn't a final solution. It's something that keeps evolving. And so you can see that it's pretty fuzzy, it's kind of messy, it's real simple, but it achieves a lot of those benefits that we talked about earlier. And that's it for me. So this is, again, this is my contact information. And as everybody has been saying, I'm really, really thrilled to have been part of this effort, and just I'm so excited to see this moving forward and gaining a lot of traction. And hopefully it's something that we've gotten to a critical place in time to where it's not something that's considered icing on the cake, but it is the flower, and it's just part of everything we need to be doing. So with that, thank you, and I will get back to Nancy.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was the perfect closing. Your on the ground experience is really really valuable. Well, here we are at the end, and I do want to take some time to answer some questions, but before we do that, I just want to make sure some of you I know will leave, that our task now is to get this bill passed so that all these good things can happen. So I encourage you to follow the steps on that slide, to get in touch with your elected officials and let them know how important this is. And we will stay in touch with you via email and via social media, even though the lecture series is ending. The campaign, the work, the advocacy for this bill is continuing. So please do your part and reach out. But let's now shift and spend the rest of our time on answering some questions. So I'll turn it over to Rachel, who's going to run the Q&A. Thanks,
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes, absolutely. And I just, sorry, I'm currently answering some messages in the chat, and I just wanted to let everybody know this session will be recorded. I know Nancy already said that, but and I just put in the chat where we will post it next week. So, and we have the recording at that same link of all of our other sessions, the other 4 lecture series. So thank you again, everybody, for presenting today. So inspiring and exciting. We did have a few questions from the chat that came up. And first, for Danielle, are you aware of any tools to analyze her urban heat island effect, or the effect of, this person said, green spaces on dry bulb temperatures? I'm not sure I understand that, but maybe you might, but just any tools that you might know of that are helpful for analyzing heat island.
I don't know the exact tools, but I would point them to the Landscape Architecture Foundation, and I can find the link and put it in the chat in a minute, but they have a series of case studies where they analyze how people were measuring performance, and one of those is urban heat island, and they've consolidated a lot of this information into a set of guidance, a document that outlines guidance on how to measure and what tools those would be. So I'll find the link and stick it in the chat for that. That's, I don't know if the others have any input to that.
Yeah, absolutely. If other presenters have thoughts on that, feel free to share. Great. Thank you, Danielle. So Greg, if you're still there, somebody wanted to hear just a little bit more about the outside the use zone. If you could explain that. In some of your says, please explain outside the use zone. I included a use zone when installing steppers at a 12-foot height.
Yeah, so both ASTM and CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, publish national safety, playground safety guidelines. And I've gone through those programs several times, and they're very, very prescriptive of a use zone around equipment. But they're also pretty black and white about what is considered equipment. One of the issues that we face is that we have inspectors who will go to a school and say, well, how does a kid know that this log stepper is not play equipment? And so there is some gray area that's within that. But I think that there's a lot of solutions that show that allow us to do things like say that things are an outdoor classroom with logs to sit on and that sort of thing, and that excludes them from being considered manufactured playground equipment. So specifically, what we've really been clear on in our plans is to label the use zone of the manufactured play equipment, and then to have references outside of that and it comes down to sometimes the language that we use. If we call something movable seating for outdoor classroom, it makes it not be a stump stepper. But that also becomes then a tool for teachers and administrators to say, these are for us to sit on in the outdoor classroom. And when I go back to the picture that I showed earlier, is that showing those things and talking about them with the teachers allows the teachers to say, now this isn't something that we go jumping and we use to climb over the fence and do that sort of thing, but that this is the appropriate use. And then they're not restricting kids from being kids, but they also are just having awareness and a participation in the scene.
Okay, great. Thank you. I had another quick question for you or anybody, but would you please describe an example of what a zero depth retention basin might look like in a schoolyard?
Okay, so I'll do that real quick because I know time is short. But one of the things that we do is we create soil sponges. So we actually have auger down a hole, fill it with organic mulch, auger it down 18 inches diameter by 3 feet deep. And so when the water hits our little low depression areas, it actually sucks down into the sponge instead of sitting up at the top. And so there isn't any way that somebody could fall and drown in an inch of water because basically all that water is infiltrating below the surface.
Great, thank you
Pretty,
for that.
a pretty common green stormwater infrastructure solution.
Okay, great. I think the last comment really, there's definitely a lot of great chat questions and discussion going on in the chat. I think this is more of a comment, but somebody in the chat said, I see a lot of focus on elementary schools for nature-based spaces. I would love to hear from folks that have had experience with older students, such as middle school or high school. So just want to put that call out there. I think this is often a thing that we hear, and there's definitely great examples out there. One thing I wanted to quickly mention, because we've been talking about design and urban heat island effect, it is a program that Green Schoolyards America has launched in California called the California Schoolyard Forest Initiative. And so for those of you who are in California, this is an initiative in partnership with CAL FIRE and California Department of Education and 10 Strands to address extreme heat through planting trees in schoolyards. And I wanted to just mention it because we have created a great resource library, and we'll be adding more to this. It's similar to our National Outdoor Learning Library, which is on our website, but this is all specific to schoolyard forests in order to reduce urban heat island. And one of the ways that we have engaged students in that process is through an activity called How Cool is Your Schoolyard? And that's taking temperature measurements on schoolyards. So we wanted to call that out. That'll be posted on our website very soon. There's a link, there's a space for it on our website. We're just finishing up the last edits, but that'll be a great way to engage students in the, understanding and analyzing your site so that you can then think about design and planting of trees and for shade, et cetera. So just wanted to put that out there. We're also hoping to expand that project to other states. So, and with that, I'll hand it back to Nancy.
All right, well, I think we're almost at time. Thank you all so much for coming. I was watching the participant list and we were over 260 people today. So that's really exciting. Please remember to get in touch with your elected officials. Someone asked in the chat what the timeline is, and we don't know, but I think the more noise we make, the more attention they'll pay and the quicker this will all happen. So please do your part. Thank you all for coming today. Bye-bye.